Hello everyone, it's Annika here. I have a set of cards I'm just playing around with. I wanted to use some of my background stamps with my Oxide inks and white heat embossing. So basically I'm just prepping my card bases, and these are watercolor papers. One is actually Bristol Smooth, but the other ones are regular watercolor paper. And I just wanted to see if it would be better to use Bristol or watercolor, but in the end I do prefer the watercolor. So the stamps, the background stamps I'm using are from Simon Says Stamp and Hero Arts, and then Simon Says. It's two are from Simon and one is from Hero Art. And I'm just using my Misty to be able to line these up fairly correctly. And when I had already stamped with Versamark ink or any slow drying clear ink, I am adding the white embossing powder, and I'm using the fine detail one from Ranger to the whole image, and then of course I get my heat gun and melt the whole thing. I know it's really hard to see on camera because it's white on white, but you will be seeing the detail much clearly when I add the ink to all of these backgrounds. And I'm also using this background stamp by Simon Says. It doesn't cover it fully, but I just really wanted that star kind of a pattern. And here are all my backgrounds, and I'm using these three Distress Oxide inks. And of course I will have all the products linked below. And now I'm just getting to work and inking the whole thing. And it's going fairly easy, really. You don't have to use a lot of muscle to actually get it to cover. So in that way the Oxide inks are much easier to play with when you are adding lots and lots, and it's very forgiving. I like that. And then just do the same thing with each and every background, and choosing a new color for every stamp, really, because I really want to see how it looks in different kinds of colors and settings and all that. And then this is the last background, and I just love the look of this star doily mandala pattern. And then when that is all finished, I'm just buffing off the extras so that the white embossing is really visible. Then I'm cutting each of these backgrounds using the Simon Says rectangle stitched die, and then I'm adding a bit of water to get the Oxide ink to oxide a bit. It just gives the background a bit more worn kind of a look and makes it a little bit different, really. And I do that to all three, and just blotting off the water to reveal the little oxide spots on the background. And then for the sentiment, I am die cutting a piece of vellum using an MFT die. That will basically be the place for my sentiment, and where I'll be adding the stamps that I'm using to decorate this card. And the sentiments all come from the Avery Elle stamp set called Bonjour. And I am adding these beautiful macaroons, and I'm just stamping them on a white cardstock. This is Neenah 80 lb, and I'm stamping the outlines first, and then I stamp or fill in the inside really with the same Oxide inks that I used for the backgrounds, and I double stamp so I get a really good coverage of color for each and every piece. And when I stamp the sentiment, I'm also using VersaFine Onyx black ink, because that is really, really black and I like that. And by using the Misty, I'm just basically saving time, because all I have to do is flip the images up and down and not having to rearrange each and every stamp every single time I need to stamp an image. So as you see, it's a bit blotchy, so I stamped it twice, and I did that for all of these. And when I finished stamping these yummy macaroons, I die cut them with a coordinating die as well. And now it's time for the sentiment part, and like I said, I'm using the same black ink for the sentiment. Hindsight, I should have used another ink that is a bit more, dries quickly, because if you accidentally touch it or anything like that, it will smear. Just a bit of warning. And I also added a bit of clear embossing to each of the sentiments, because it seems a bit dull compared to everything else, so that clear embossing adds a tiny bit of shine to them. Not too much, but just a tiny bit. Now I'm just arranging these on or around the circle, and I'm trying to pick them as in that the largest macaron is the same color as the background, and then I'm just switching the other ones up so it's a bit more colorful than just all one color really. So the biggest one gets a bit of foam tape to make it a bit more visually pleasing, and then I decided to add one more on the top, and yes, I used Ranger Superfine Clear embossing powder for the sentiments, and I also added a bit of foam behind every background, and I use my Ranger Multimedia Matte to stick that to the card base and the background. Since these cards are quite simple in design, I really like adding a bit of dimension by using foam. It just adds a little bit to the card, makes it a bit more, I don't know, dimensional, I guess. And now I'm just adding the sentiment to each and every card, keeping them centered-ish, not being too precise, just thereabouts. And I do that to all 3 cards. So I want to keep these cards really simple, since the background is rather busy, but still I felt I needed a bit more, I don't know, decoration by using those macaroons along with the sentiment for each and every card. And the vellum basically helps keep the focus on that background on each and every card. And now at the end I felt like I needed a tiny bit more, so I used my Nuvo drops in black just to add a bit of decoration and shine and little something here and there, and that really kind of finishes the card. Really, I like to use the black because I mean all the stamping is black and it's a good contrast to all the whites and the soft colors. And that is basically the cards finished. And as I said before, I'll have links to everything I used below the video. And here are some still shots for you to have a look at. Thanks again for watching. Bye.